Everybody, this is Yuuki. He runs
Howdy.
player grade vintage guitars.
That's the one.
Uh, you will find him on Instagram in big fashion, at least in the vintage world. You make a splash there.
Do you reckon?
Don't
According to who? According to you.
according and I'm an authority because I'm interviewing you. So
Sure, okay. I
suck it up.
respect your authority.
Uh, I discovered you maybe 5 years ago. You were taking a 1960
Yeah.
Les Paul Custom and
Mm,
converting it to a more of like a burst, like a
mm.
standard. You filled
Yeah,
in,
very controversial actually. I got a lot of flack for that.
yeah, that's, well, got a lot of attention for it, I'm sure, as well. Just,
Um, yeah, I guess so. Um, um, I just really saw it as an opportunity to get a bit of genuine old wood for not a lot of money. And it seemed like a worthy husk, so to speak. I didn't have any grand designs to make an impact on the community, but I guess it made some
well,
inroads.
made an impact on me.
Mm.
I didn't like it necessarily.
Did you not?
Yeah, well, the work you did was fantastic. You know what?
Ah, interesting.
I'm getting sidetracked here.
Yeah,
That,
sure.
not I need to finish my introduction here. Um, that is how I discovered you 5 years ago,
Mm.
in somewhat controversial fashion. Um,
All right.
Probably as close to a direct competitor on, at least, yeah, I would say so. In
Interesting.
this world of vintage stuff as there
Wow.
is, and I'm very glad to find that you're a wonderful person and a good
Well,
friend. And
I've buttered you up, mate, in your time in hospital, so you've taken it
you
hook, line, and sinker.
you impress me on a couple of levels, not just your work, but your attitude. There's a couple of other people who do the vintage thing, and they seem to like running around with rock stars and taking pictures and you know advertising themselves very heavily in
Mm.
that way. And you use your work to advertise what you do and your product, and I admire that.
Oh, I appreciate
And
the kind words, Joe.
yeah, yeah, the I don't know, and you're just really humble about what you do, and really the amazing work that you do. So, that said, I'm very glad that you're here. I'm really glad that we can be talking about this
Yeah, me
because
too,
I
man.
hope to learn a lot. That
Yeah,
said,
right.
no, I'll learn a lot about you at least.
Okay, well, you're going to learn a lot about
How's
me,
that?
but you're not going to learn any new techniques, that's for sure.
Unlikely. So, how did what's your story, man? How did music, guitars, what?
Mm, um, I think much like yourself, I was just you know, a teen guitar player. Um, I didn't have any particular sort of vintage leanings or interest, but we've got this thing called Gumtree in the UK, which is basically Craigslist, which is
Mhm.
just listings of all kinds of stuff. And most people on there are pretty crazy, like weirdos and whatnot. But I would always flick through there looking for cheap guitars, like cheap, happen to be old guitars. And, you know, you do find quite a lot of messed up vintage American guitars in the UK. I'm not too sure why, but you could find the odd 50s gold top with a refin and a headstock break, or an old melody maker or something cool. And I would buy these for 1,500 quid. Um, Kind of try to fix them up the best I could myself, and then you could play them for 6 months and sell them on for 4 grand. So it was impossible not to make money and have fun and dabble in like cool guitars. even if you don't have a predisposition to it, you could hold original finishes and you could have Brazilian fretboards and you can play them in a sort of a non-pretentious way. I think, oh, that's fucking cool. That's a cool guitar. And then you make money on it. And everybody wanted them. They're very easy to sell.
Mhm.
So that kind of got into a more like a dealer flipper thing. I'd see something cool that I liked. I'd do minor work on it, like putting pickups in it and doing really bad solder with like a 25-watt iron and the wrong kind of solder, and it would clump, and I'd get really annoyed. But then I'd always sell it on for more money, and I did that for a while until I bought that specific guitar I sent a picture of you of with the blue top, that Les Paul,
Mhm.
which was so trashed. Whoever I took it to was like, keep the logo, keep the fretboard, throw the rest away. I was like, no, no, man, it's a 56 Les Paul. You can see it's got a nice top on it. The neck is sound, the body sound. Like, man, it's pointless. It's a waste of time. No one's going to want it. I don't have the time to fix it. It's just junk, which I was really bummed out about. And it was basically purely through necessity. I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to have a go. I'm just going to have a go. It's firewood anyway. I'll just have a go. Um, so that was the first time I ever used a router. I had to scarf on a new headstock. It had pins in it. I
I was
mean,
going to ask, what your previous history in woodworking and
zilch,
all that.
zilch.
None.
Yeah,
So
nothing at all.
your first big project
Yeah,
was a 56 Les Paul.
it was a late 55. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm. It had
That
the Cornell caps in it, quite rare for the tone caps. Yeah. And it had the neck
that's
stuck on with no pitch, with pins, and the back was cut off, and it had those giant sort of lung-shaped hole sawed out things in it. It's probably the
yeah.
thickness of an SG. I mean, it's bonkers, really.
I'm going to try sharing the screen here. If I can get this open so we can look at this guitar.
Mm.
Hold on one second. I am not that capable with Zoom.
Yeah, it's very confusing. They should streamline the thing.
I, I agree completely. All right. I am attempting to share something.
Oh, look at that. You nailed it. Yeah. So, I mean, with this
So,
guitar, I had the original pickups. It had a horseshoe Bigsby, original knobs, original harness. So a lot of decent parts on it. But as you can see, the back was completely chewed out with these symmetrical, like lung-shaped weight relief.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, my without having really looked at this before, my guess was going to be this was, oh, there's a left-hand conversion or something. But no,
yeah, there's
there's
no
no
holes
holes
in it.
through the top.
Yeah, some guy found it too heavy, so it wasn't flat at all on the back. I think he used like a some sort of floor sander and just ran it over the back with like 60 grit.
Jesus.
Um, it was about SG thickness. You can see it's
Wow.
gone way beyond on the switch cavity. It's gone way beyond the lip. So they took a load of wood off.
Yeah.
But
And then you
otherwise
stuck
sound.
a significant
Yeah.
amount of wood back
Yeah.
on the rear of the instrument.
And reverse engineered the control cavity by making a paper template of the bottom of the cavity, and then making that into MDF template, and then filling it in with a solid block, and then routing it back in again. It's like crazy,
Oh,
crazy stuff, really, thinking
that's
back.
impressive. I
I
like
think it
that.
was what do they call it? It's not like beginner's luck, but just
Uh,
foolhardy, really.
talent. How's that?
Well, you could call it talent, I suppose, but yeah, I have to talk to my therapist about that. Which you are not, by the way, Joel, despite our
Uh,
conversations.
some days.
Yeah, so I always had to replace the headstock, which I remember taking out the truss rod fillet. I think I just drilled down it with a drill, and then sort of peeled the thing out. Ah, man, I don't know how I'd even do that now. You know how
The
hard it is to
router.
get a
Oh
50s
yeah,
truss rod out?
I
That
do.
anchor doesn't want to come out.
No.
So yeah, it's pretty bonkers. And because I didn't know how to finish, I I sawed off the old holly veneer and stuck it on the new headstock purely because I didn't know how to finish and I didn't know how to mask the Gibson. I was like, shit, I'm just gonna leave it. So yeah,
That's awesome. You know,
yeah, pretty
you
pretty
have, you have
harebrained
to
stuff.
figure it out along the way. And
Yeah,
I,
mm,
I trust that that was a significant amount of work, but
yeah, for
you,
sure.
you made some
Um,
money on it.
I did. I sold all the parts. It had a lift and case with it. I probably sold the parts for more than what I paid for the wood. And it sold 6 years later for like £12,000 or £14,000 through a major UK dealer. Because
That's
at the
a
end of the
good
day,
business model.
a 56 Les Paul, it is a 56 Les Paul.
Yeah,
And when it's presentable, you forgive a lot of sins, I think.
an
Um,
awful lot of sins.
yeah, because it's a cool old guitar. And if it looks good and plays good, then it is good. Um, but even within that period of time, the market has changed so much. I mean, I don't know if that's even a true statement anymore. But
Um,
yeah, it worked out
I,
fine.
when I think when you said people are willing to forgive a lot of sins,
Mm,
what you did was legitimate repair, Lutheran.
yeah,
You made it a good
yeah,
instrument. Um,
yeah.
People do forgive a lot of sins because there's some really shit instruments out there because people
Mm.
really want money as fast as
Oh, yeah.
possible and they don't know what they're doing. Who knows what it is? But
I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. That's for sure. Though
no,
looking back now and seeing the body of work that I have done, I have scarfed on a lot of headstocks now, and now I do know what I'm doing. Um, so yeah, I have to give myself credit in that regard, begrudgingly.
the body of work that you present on the internet is significant.
Mm,
You've worked on a lot of 50s
yeah,
Gibsons
I have,
at this
yeah, which
point.
is pretty
Yeah.
interesting. I think part of it is because I buy the guitars no one else will touch.
Do you think that's still a true statement?
It is not. We both know two of our esteemed colleagues who buy everything, which is even mildly fucked up. I'm like, God damn it. I don't call that a turd, mate. I call that bread and butter. But I don't have the finances.
Yeah, it's interesting how beat up guitars are the thing,
Um,
and not even beat up, almost non-playable.
I think, seeing as you gave me the compliment of considering me a peer, what you and I do falls in a different niche, which is like there's almost added value from having someone who really knows vintage working on an old guitar than even if it's got issues and it's got breaks and whatnot. I think a buyer who'd be interested in such an instrument appreciates that you've worked on it. Thus, it has even more cachet because it's very much a restoration. Um, I don't know if I've got that kind of recognition as yet, but who knows?
Uh, I appreciate your humble British thing,
No,
but I I mean we probably share a lot of the same clientele, um,
mm,
and
yeah. Mm.
I can say for a fact that they like your work and they know
Well,
who
I
you
can
are, and
take
obviously,
you can bring me anything and I'll fix it and get it playable. And I'll do it in such a way where it's not like, oh, that will do. But like, this is going to be cool. The headstock will be the right shape. It'll be asymmetrical. It'll be tapered at the side. All that stuff, which really means quite a lot to me. I won't use a historic Gibson logo because it's completely wrong. I'll get the 50s one and I'll do a proper silk screen, which is not gold, it's brown gold and has other stuff in it. That kind of stuff means a lot to me. So I think people who do appreciate details appreciate that attention for detail. So I don't know.
So
I'm
riddle
just
me
a
this.
I'm a
I mean,
mega
there's,
nerd.
which is exactly what vintage buyers want. Um,
Mm,
you know, that that said, how did you figure out all of these details outside of just observation?
oh,
Which I mean,
well, um, when I was a kid in my teens, my mom's Japanese, and she was in the antiques trade, and she had a friend in Tokyo who my dad was buddies with, and they used to go gambling and getting drunk and stuff. But he was, maybe still is, one of the preeminent burst owners in Japan. Just happened to be with a vault, 12 bursts, three of them consecutive serial numbers, blonde, late 50s 335. No black guard tellies, weirdly, but like a lot of maple board fenders, a whole room completely floor to ceiling with mint tweeds. And I was like, oh, I play guitar. He's like, oh, cool. And I had like a pearlescent like Squire like super strat, which I bought for like 150 quid. And I go into his house in Tokyo and he's got a burst on a stand and a tweed champ. No, sorry, no, it wasn't a burst. It was a 90s reissue, like a super flaming. I was like, oh my God, that's the coolest guitar I've ever seen. I was like, yeah, it's nice, but you should see these ones. And he had 12 bursts. So before I even knew what those things were, I was like, yeah, this is cool. Like, holding it in my lap. And
yeah,
I remember one time at dinner, he didn't come up for dinner. So I went to go and get him. And he was sat in a chair with all his bursts, like in a semicircle, and just playing each one, putting it back, looking at it, playing another one, and just sitting there and just like, really super into it. So I got to handle these guitars without knowing they're worth 500,000 quid.
yeah.
And a few of them, when I guess that was like the back door into experiencing that caliber of guitar and even the smell of the Lifton cases, which you and me know so
Mhm.
well. The smell comes from the case, not even from the guitar. Um, that really got into my pores, and I just had a love for it from that point on. Um, and then I got a job in a central London vintage shop because I had access to everything. I'd spend my lunch times in the case room. So I was, 57 gold top, get that out, really look it over, every detail, take the back covers off, really get in there and just inspect it because I had the opportunity. Or, you know, Fender's not so much interested in, but there's a very high end shop that had a lot of super cool rare guitars, and I would just spend the whole time just soaking them in. So I have said in the past, I can shoot you a guitar which looks and feels real because all I've done is be bored to death in a shop for several years just looking at guitars. It's so boring being in retail. So I do, I'm very, very intimately aware of those little things which make something seem right. Yeah. I know the same as for you. If a guitar comes in, you want to see if it's right. And that's beyond looking at the nuts and bolts of it. There's a patina and an ambiance. And I'm very, very familiar with that. So I guess that helps in what I do.
Well, for sure. I mean, after you handle enough of these instruments,
Mm,
I would imagine that it's almost more instinctual. You
for
just
sure.
look at
Yeah.
something and it's just, oh, that's not right.
Yeah, exactly. It's either right or wrong. And so, well, what's wrong with it? You're like, it's even hard to explain, dude.
Yeah,
It's how the pore filler isn't bleeding much, or the binding scrape doesn't have that little ledge on it where they went a little bit too hard. And like, what are you even talking about? Like, I don't, but that kind of stuff, the minutiae really, for me, is very, very significant. And I do try to engage with, I mean, I'm just obsessed with, old cool guitars. And that stuff is part of that obsession.
now is that something that you feel is an overarching theme in your life, attention to detail, or is it very specific to guitars and the work that you do?
I'm pretty sure I'm on the spectrum, if that's what you're asking me. Yeah, because I do have that I do have that kind of mentality. Like, I find it hard to buy the correct strap buttons because they're the wrong shape, man. I just can't put on those slightly too flared ones. It's like, oh fuck, I got to get some proper ones. Um, so yeah, I am. Mm, yeah, I mean, at least for this, I have a very close attention for detail. Um, as you and I have discussed, like when you see the Murphy labs, they're just like, oh Jesus Christ, I can't even look at it. Let's not even talk about the finish, but like the ABR's the wrong shape and the dovetail shit and the knobs don't look right and the garden, like the cutaway's weird and now the finish and everything else is just so not right when I'm very used to, okay, that feels right. That, you know,
What do you think the rationale is behind that? Because there's no reason they couldn't get every detail correct, or at least close enough that you'd have to stick a caliper on it to figure it out.
honestly, I just don't think they're that intimately invested in their product. They don't live and breathe. I mean, it's a difference between being a consumer and a creator. We're creators, so we need to know that stuff. I mean, I guess if you're not working on old ones all the time, perhaps the difference is subtle enough to be irrelevant. While for us, it's absolutely critical. I mean, it's not just a matter of getting. I mean, there's so many things involved in painting. Obviously, the color needs to be right, but then there's style, or I mean, there is an artistic element. You need the right eye. Um, that's a very subtle appreciation of what you're trying to attain. I just don't think there's the attention to detail on the final product for Gibson, which is, I mean, they're making a lot more money than we are. So
That they are. I mean, you
yeah.
mentioned needing an artistic approach to this,
Mm,
particularly with paint. Do you
mm.
have sort of an artistic, like a fine arts background at all?
No,
No.
not at all. Not at all. My partner says to me, what do you think? Where should we put these things? I'm like, I have no fucking idea. Like, should we put that over here? I'm like, I can't even imagine what you're talking about. What color's the floor going to be? I just can't visualize it. But if we're talking about, that when someone shows me a path and it's not a path and the dome of the brass screws is wrong, I'm like, that's not real. They're like, how do you know? Because the dome of the screw is too rounded. They're like, what are you talking about? So, I know I sound like Rain Man, but seriously, they're completely flat at the top. So yeah, I do have an attention to detail in that regard.
Well, I mean, it
Sim-
serves you well in this
Hmm,
niche.
yeah, yeah, I guess it does. Yeah, but I wasn't making any money back in the day when I was noticing that the base plate screws look different on reissues versus, you know, the old stuff.
Well,
So yeah,
you're making a living at it now, and
yeah.
like, when was this Blue Les Paul? This first guitar of yours?
7 or 8 years ago.
Only that
Yeah,
long?
no more than that. Yeah.
That's
Mm.
impressive.
Yeah, I guess it must be. Yeah.
It
Mm.
is. It is. That's very cool.
I
Um,
have no like career plan or path. I just think it of, oh, I've got a guitar in now, fix that. I've got another one. They're just individual projects which sort of chain together. Yeah.
so presumably at the time you were buying these guitars off of Gumtree, was it?
Hmm.
You had a real job, a
Oh
real
no, no,
job.
I've never had a real job, dude. I was a
No,
I was a barely scraping past like jobbing musician. Um,
really.
and then I got some touring work, so I was making okay money ish. Um, and then I got the job at the shop, which was 50 quid a day, and it cost like £9 to get in there and out. So I was, you know,
Yeah.
But I was doing that, so I had a bit of money to buy stuff in. But no, I've never ever had a proper job. I've never worked in an office. I've never been to HR. I've never done any of those things, which is kind of not something I'm proud of.
No, it's a blessing.
Perhaps.
So you've managed to build the player grade vintage empire, or shall we call it, in 7 years.
Yeah, if you put it that way, I guess so. Yeah,
I, when you scroll through even your Instagram, there's a lot of
yeah.
guitars on there. How many do you have
Mm.
going at any one time? When did you start taking this more seriously in terms of I might be able to make a living at this. This might be my job, you know?
Well, it was much easier when I could flip stuff because I'd spend 3 grand and make 7 grand. So, I, I was stacking up the money to an extent. And if you got two guitars, I bought a early 1963 35 Husk and also a 59 Les Paul Custom Husk. They thought the Seymour Duncans were double white paths, even though they were wax potted and they had the tape, the Seymour Duncan tape on the back. I was like, you know what? I don't need those paths. Like, that's fine, man. We'll knock off like 30 grand. I was like, fine. So I remember buying that, and I had some other paths I put in, and I ended up selling those two for about 25 grand a pair. So I had a decent sort of war chest, which carried me over into other projects. So um,
And it's been project to project since.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, finding stuff is impossible now.
Well,
Um,
at this point, I would imagine people would be at least wanting to bring you stuff. Whether or not you're accepting that, I don't know. But
I don't actually do any outside work at all, unless it's for a mate, because it just takes up too much of my time. I remember with that blue Les Paul, I took it to Damien Probert, who I'm sure you know, he's a lovely guy, and he said to me, "I can't work on this because I've got my own stuff to do. I make more money doing my own work than I could charge you for this." I didn't really understand that at the time. Although, well, you're a luthier, you'd want to fix it, but now it's the same way. Um, I pretty much turn down absolutely everything, and the things that I do take on, I regret taking on because it takes so long. Um, and energy is limited, and it takes. You can't do anything. You can't paint guitar sort of quickly. It's a tedious process with many steps you can't piss about on. You can't do woodwork quickly. You can't just slap stuff together. It's like it takes a lot of time and attention. So yeah, I've learned to just turn stuff down pretty much. I'm sure you can empathize.
uh, I love turning people down.
Mm,
Uh,
I know, but I remember you saying after a while you kind of become the second choice because you're the first choice who isn't available.
I don't know. I don't want to talk about me. Um, I think, I mean, it looks like you're starting to make your own Les
Yeah, I
Paul,
am.
or
Mm.
how would you phrase it? Replica?
You could phrase it like that, yeah. Yeah, because I just
Uh,
can't find the projects.
yeah.
And they're now 15, 20,000 bucks for something trashed. And I don't have that kind of money to be buying. It just doesn't make any sense to me anymore. It's almost not fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Is
I
that
mean,
something you prefer to do? Would you rather be finding old guitars?
oh man, yeah, I love finding old guitars.
Yeah.
I love it. I get excited. It's like Santa, when that box arrives, I'm like, what's going to be in here? And I do enjoy using the skill of seeing. Like I bought a 53 Les Paul recently that was listed on Reverb as a 72. I was like, that's not 72. Like you look at the control cavity, it's got the small output hole. Well, they never did that in the 70s or any other time. So I managed to buy that for about $4,000. And yeah, it was a early 50s, 53. Um, I do really enjoy exercising that thing of seeing crappy pictures on the other side of the world and honing in on it and then buying it. It's very exciting. The guitar safari, as they call it.
Well, the guitar safari in the traditional sense is getting out on the
Mm.
road and driving around. Do you do any of that, or is this
There's nothing
mostly
in
I'm
there's
looking at
nothing in the
pictures?
UK. There's nothing in the
Yeah.
UK. We simply don't have anything. Not that I can access. Um, all the good stuff's in the States, what used to be at least. I mean,
Yeah.
numbers wise, but it's completely dried up. Um,
Out of
I think
curiosity, have you ever had any importation issues?
none at all. No. Once FedEx lost a $35,000 guitar, I'm like, oh, sorry, man. You can file a claim. I was like, it's not good enough. And it was in a holding cage in New York for no reason whatsoever. There's nothing wrong with it. It wasn't a rosewood issue, nothing. Um, that's the worst thing
You
that's ever happened.
you managed to track it down.
Oh yeah, I managed to track it down. I was gonna have to
Okay.
refund the guy, which would not have been very pleasant, but yeah, it's fine. No, no
Okay.
importation issues.
That's good. I've had quite a few issues with customs and
Mm,
wood and so forth, particularly into the UK. So I stopped doing any shipping
really? Oh wow.
overseas. Yeah,
Oh wow.
quite a
Hmm,
lot. Started about, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. It was getting
really?
really
Wow.
bad. Yeah. I don't maybe it's
Uh,
changed, but yeah.
well, I don't think there's many British people listening, but you can rely on good old British incompetence to get you through. They're just not going to notice. You know, whenever they phone me up and say, "What's this guitar made of?" I'm like, "Pine." They go, "Oh yeah, no worries. Send it through."
I hear you. So
And
to no, go
with
ahead.
building the replicas, I think if you can extrapolate down that I will consider filing the end of a modern ABR to make it elliptical because it kind of matters to me. If you get down to wood and building something, I have a desire to build something which feels and sounds like the old guitars I work on, which seems pretty logical to me. So yeah, I just started having a go at building them.
I, you seem to have basically taught yourself all of these techniques along the way.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
one of
yeah.
the most difficult, uh, in my experience, is finish, particularly getting
Mm.
a correct finish, at least the stages and all of that. And if I'm correct, you don't really have a paint booth in your shop. So,
I have access to the most ghetto, flooded, filthy, shit lights, terrible spray room downstairs with
all
an
right.
industrial extractor, which recently blew up and sent bolts flying everywhere. So yeah, I have access to that, but
Okay.
it's got a good air feed. So yeah, I have access to that.
And you just sat there and painted and painted and painted until you came up with a technique that,
Well, I used to paint in a shed which was 6 foot by 4 foot. I painted that blue guitar in there with one of those fence sprayers,
oh
like
yeah,
the those giant things where
oh
the
yeah,
nozzle's like 2.5 mil. And I had a little open bar heater, which I heated the room up in while shooting nitro. And the
yeah.
extractor fan was about palm sized, just spraying vapors out
I love
onto the
it.
local
Just
kids. So
tell
yeah,
me
that's where I learned.
you were doing it without a respirator and the trifecta would be complete.
I did have a full face respirator, thank God.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
But yeah, that's how I learned to paint. My very good friend Alex at Whiz Pickups gave me like a list of steps via WhatsApp. So, okay, it's pour. You got to give a like a you have to mist coat of sealer before you do the pour filler so it doesn't stain the mahogany red because you want the pore filler to retain its color while the aniline fades. I'm like, okay, so I'd shoot it with this fence thing. That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's the extent of my education. I still don't know how to wet sand properly. Like, yeah.
The Finnish article would disagree. The finishes you do are beautiful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that, Joel. Well, Alex, I think we've spoken about I don't even know how to pronounce his name, but Bharat Kandahar, who was like the he's like a specter in the UK vintage scene. Like, have you met him? Have you seen him? He got a burst and he made it into 4 bursts and he wouldn't even know. This kind of thing. And he is the OTP over the pond guy who made the paths, and he kind of educated some UK winders. And Alex and Barrett have a close relationship, and Barrett kind of taught him some of his painting techniques, which he then taught me via WhatsApp. We've never actually spoken on the phone together, me and Alex.
WhatsApp is a very useful tool.
Yeah, it's good. It avoids a face-to-face contact. Yeah,
until a couple days ago, we'd never talked face to face.
that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
there it is. No, it's certainly the people that I admire most in this business are people who have a streak of ingenuity, just or intuition or whatever it is for figuring out what they need to do.
I kind of almost see it as like sculpture, or it's making shapes things out of blocks of wood ultimately. And if you know the results you want, you just whittle it away until you get there, which seems quite sort of glib way of describing it, but I don't really see it much more complicated than that.
It's not untrue.
But, I mean, we're both craftsmen, so maybe perhaps to people outside they're like, my God, it's magical, but I don't know if it is so much.
But I mean, there is a spectrum across which you can accomplish that. One being sort of very artistically and organically, almost completely by hand with a rasp and whatever. And then, they're shaping a neck, for example. You could then do the sort of octagon or whatever shapes that people do on the back of a neck and measure it out, and it gives you more guidance. Or you could take it to the next step and just do CNC. And there's a variety of ways you could do it.
But what I actually realized when I built my first guitar was, okay, I've re-neck guitars. I've carved necks. I've grafted on headstocks. I've fixed inlays. I've rebound Les Pauls. I've done loads of filling of, pickup cavities and stuff. I have the templates for humbuckers and P90s. I've recarved tops. I've done everything there is to do to build a guitar. So I just combined all of those kind of discrete jobs into an actual build. And because when I do graft on headstock, I have to match the profile that comes to me. I've carved, accurate 50s necks. My kid crying his face on upstairs.
If you need to take care of that, just
no, I've done my time. Thank you. He's fine.
Okay.
His mom's with him, so I realized I've actually done all of these. I've reset necks and things, so I've done all of the things to build a guitar. And as I said, because I've had to do with very great attention to detail to make my repair blend with an old guitar, I am quite sophisticated in scraping logos, or I do have a little overhang of the black on the headstock around the edge, and my headstocks are asymmetrical because it's just little jobs I've had to pay a lot of attention to. So yeah, I don't know, it kind of all adds up.
God, I hope you never look at a guitar that I work on.
I hope you never look. You actually sent me a message saying, "Hey, a guy here's got one of your guitars." It's like I've never seen that guitar in my life.
I asked if it was one of yours.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Slight difference, but
Right. Okay.
they 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 thought it was. It was not.
I have actually had people um, sell guitars as one of mine using my name, which I find completely baffling. Like it seems way too obscure to get you any more money for one of those things. But yeah,
I
just
I think
curious.
that goes back to exactly what you were saying earlier, that you have an expertise in this particular field, and it
Mm.
adds value. Um, and that's a beautiful place to be.
It's a strange place to find myself. Also, the niche of player grade, my God, has it ever been more valuable, relevant? I didn't have
Both,
enough money to buy guitars, so I fixed them
yeah.
up, and they were still super cool guitars. Now, straight guitars are completely unattainable. And I said, well, you can buy this 64 335 for 30,000 bucks, or you can have mine for 12. It's the same guitar. It looks the same, it feels the same, and it sounds the same. Or you could buy a Murphy Lab for 8.5. For me, it's a complete no-brainer as a player. Mm, I mean, yeah, so I guess I'm lucky in that regard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the people who can afford this kind of instrument agree. Um,
Well, I'm getting a bit of a fuck you attitude to like, well, if you're going to spend 9 grand on a Murphy Lab, you should buy mine for 14 because you don't even know what you're talking about. This is a real golden era Gibson. I
yeah.
can shoot better finishes than Gibson can. We shouldn't probably slag Gibson off too much, but um,
No, honestly, they
you
deserve
know,
it, if you ask me. I mean, there's
yeah,
no excuse for
yeah,
them not to do a decent product, and they try really hard not to.
they're so expensive too. Just for terms of value for money, I just, I mean, I love vintage Japanese guitars, which are, they're not expensive, but some of them are really cool guitars. Like they have a great vibe and they feel good, and they've got like rolled fingerboards and stuff. You can tell those guys cared. I mean, you can produce a very cool, resonant, great sounding guitar. Like this piece of shit, this Greco, which I
Mhm.
absolutely love. It's got the Sen Ash, it's got slab board, 500 bucks. Sounds fantastic. Um, yeah, if they wanted to make a cool, you can make a very cool guitar for not a lot of money. They make not cool guitars for a crazy amount of money, which I just don't appreciate.
I'm I'm with you. And
Mm,
when they do gimmicks, like they had a some kind of specialty V that they produced this past
yeah,
year, and it was like $50,000 or something. And you have to go to Gibson and collect it and shake somebody's
yeah.
hand or something like that. It's just why? I don't know. Anyway,
But
um,
as we have said on Instagram, we've both said, yeah, we'll still take their money.
I would gladly if they were giving me any,
Yeah,
but they're not.
me neither.
So
Yeah, I actually
um,
have I've got a late 50s Carina dual steel body, which has just enough Carina. It's an inch and a half thick. It's huge. It's just enough Carina to make a V out of. That'd be
what are
pretty
your
fun, huh?
do you have any do you feel any ethical or moral or whatever connection to the original instrument in terms of, hey, this is a cool guitar the way it is, and I can repair it to
Oh
what
yeah.
it's supposed to be, or I can do this and make more money
Um,
at it.
I simply don't get guitars like that. My guitars are wrecks. Excuse me. The more wreck, the better, to be honest.
For example,
Mm.
um, on my pretentious high horse that I sit on, that first 1960 custom Les Paul,
Yeah,
you could
yeah.
have very easily returned that to a 60 custom.
Well, that guitar was for sale for probably 18 months. Bill Pandolfi had it. He's a cool guy. It was refinished in the 70s. So they took the black finish off and it revealed the flame top, still with three pickups. It had a headstock crack. The neck was shaved down to like 1 9/16. Bill tried to sell that. It was 85 grand, it was 75 grand, 60 grand, 50 grand. Nobody wanted it. Nobody, like, who wants a flame top three pickup Les Paul custom? What even is it? Nobody wanted it. He took it around to all the shows. He sent me an email saying, he said something like, I'm fucking done with it. You can have it $8,500. I was like, I'll take this. I'll take this
Hell yeah.
guitar. And, people were like, oh my God, what have you done to that guitar? I said, dude, you could have bought it 25 times over if you wanted to. Nobody wants this guitar.
Yeah.
So,
It
I don't
it
know.
it took me a little while to wrap my head around that project, but
Mm.
when you got the finished product, it made sense. I was like, oh, okay, I get what he was doing and why he was doing it, and
Well,
you
it's
know,
just good bones, isn't it, really?
yeah,
I don't know. Some people do get quite irate about these kinds of things, but mm,
well,
no.
on the amount of like 52 and 53 Les Pauls that I've converted to 57 or whatever,
Yeah.
and not thought twice about it. I'm
Mm,
sitting here now and thinking, those are some really great guitars in their own right. And
yeah, for
I,
sure. I
over
mean,
the past couple of years, I've stopped doing those almost completely, unless there's
mm,
something tragically wrong with the guitar.
yeah, a dude, what did he ask me yesterday? He's got a one owner 64335, which is pretty beat. He's like, oh, I want you to refinish it for me because it's too beat. I'm like, sell the guitar, man. Like, it's not the guitar for you. He's like, I like a relic guitar, but this is too far. So, well, I could refinish the back, but then it leaves the sides, which are chewed up. I could refinish the sides, the neck's chewed up, refinish the neck, then might as well refinish the top. I'll tell you what, you can give me 3 grand and I will lose you 12 grand. So it's just pointless. Like, I'm not going to touch a cool old guitar like that.
Yeah.
He's also got a 1960 Junior with a terrible thick finish on it. So yeah, I'll refinish that for you and make it look proper, like how it should do. Um, but um, no, I'm not like so avaricious that I will say, oh yeah, fine, I'm going to strip the gold top off that guitar in case there's flame underneath it. Then I'm going to convert it to humbuckers. If
Yeah.
it's original finish, one, I can't afford it, and two, I'll leave it. I'll think about doing a neck set if I'm able to do a neck set without messing up the finish. Then I will undertake it. But otherwise, I'm not messing up cool old guitars. It's definitely not what I do.
No, I would agree with that. You're
I,
not about messing up old, cool
no,
guitars.
they're pre-messed with, and they come to me.
Yeah.
And I've said a few times, I'm going to convert it right. It's already been converted poorly in the 70s or the 80s. Now I'm going to do it with an expert hand and make it everything it can be. And I feel a bit like it even strikes me as slightly cheesy, but I do often get the sense that this guitar has never been this good since it was first came off the production line. Nobody has given this guitar this amount of attention and dialed it in this well, and it looks better than it ever has done. I get a huge amount of satisfaction from it. It's extremely gratifying, and they're really cool guitars, and they're so fun to play. And you get to play kind of a burst. You get to play .NET 335s. You get the most desirable guitars in the world, and you get to play them in the workshop and stuff.
Speaking of the workshop, I'd like to show people one or two more guitars that um, you've worked on, and then your shop, so people can see just real quick.
Where the tragic happens, yeah.
Well, that you do an amazing amount of work in
You should
in
see how much time I spend on Instagram messaging you, Joel. So come on, let's be real.
it's a charmingly disheveled, maybe 500 square foot space that I don't think I
Yeah,
could even get into and turn around, let alone get work
yeah.
done in,
Hmm.
which, it's cool. You don't have to have a lot to do a lot. And um, I think it's pretty amazing what you managed to do. Now I just need to figure out how to share screen. I'm not good at this. I'm sorry.
You got it last time.
All right. So tell me what we're looking at.
This is 62335. A dude I've known for like 20 years went to an auction in Wales and paid £1,800 for it. Refinished black over the original red, but had an original path in it. I mean, how many layers of paint is on there? There's like a purple sparkle, there's black, there's white. Oh, dude, the inside of this guitar was filled with floor epoxy. Like, uh, I don't know how much was in there. 5 or 6 mils of floor epoxy. They poured it through the F holes. Like, I scraped it
To,
out with a heated spoon. I had a long, like a dessert spoon, heated it up on the with the heat gun, put it through the F hole and just peeled it out like orange peel.
what were
Um,
they trying to accomplish with that, do you
Maybe the guitar was too light, too
think?
resonant or something, too feedbacky.
I
Uh,
love it.
but it has the solid center, like a 50s one.
Right.
Um, and this monstrosity of a headstock attached to it with the world's biggest volute.
I
And just
saw
loads of
that.
Bondo. So I had to saw that thing off and slap a new one on. That's my old Selma amp. That was
Yeah,
cool.
it's a lovely amp. Like,
I'll describe my jig for this, Joel.
sure.
It's 2 wedges of oak, double sticked to a piece of MDF, and I just take a blade off a saw and I ride the wedges and saw it very carefully, leaving enough width for the kerf, and that's it. That's my system.
I love it. That
The hardest
says
part is getting the truss rod channel very slightly deeper towards the nut. That was a pain in the ass, but I got there in the end. And look, it's beautiful.
it is beautiful.
And it was a
And
fantastic guitar.
and more than that, it looks correct.
That's actually like I can't remember what the finish is, but it's like a burgundy, like a kind of I wanted to look like a watermelon cherry, but it had to be a solid finish. So I kind of shot it like a faded out cherry over a sparkle. Yeah, it's kind of thing, perhaps Gibson could have done at some point. Vintage, what do they call that? Adjacent finish. Yeah.
All right, now I have to figure out how to stop sharing here. All right, there we go. And I'm going to try to. I have a short video of your shop.
I wish I'd emptied the bin.
I think this is beautiful. Let me know if you can see this.
I can see that. That's my very proud of that huge lump of wood I have.
What are we looking at?
You're looking at a really cool 1930s poster my dad stole from a warehouse like
I'm
in
going to
the
go back
90s.
here. Stop.
That's a mint condition 65 Sorrento. It's a fucked 65 335. Single cut junior and a really cool 63 SG. Um,
As we
but
pan
the wood,
around here, yeah, you had quite a nice little vintage wood pile
yeah,
here.
yeah, that stuff is
Priceless
again,
at this point.
yeah, it's incredibly, incredibly hard to find. All you can find is Sapedi, which is unacceptable. Um, Yeah, I've got a good pile of good, thick, old mahogany.
Where did you manage to find this stuff?
Um,
Or how? You know,
I get lucky with people whose dads die who were carpenters and have a barn full of this old mahogany, which they've not touched since like, 30, 40 years. And nobody wants it because it's 7 feet long and, you know, 6 inches thick or 8 inches thick. And
well,
yeah, I
it,
just get it slapped on a pallet and send it over. Yeah.
how very fortunate.
Well, that's
That's
again,
the
that's
thing to
completely
do.
impossible now.
Yeah. So I trust you've had most of that a while.
Yeah, I've had that a few years. Yeah. Well,
All
two or
right.
3 years
We're
now.
going to pause here real quick. I see we have a little couch. Well,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't.
where my boy sleeps sometimes.
And what do we have here?
69 Les Paul, one of my replicas, and a 68 custom.
Fantastic.
And there's the freezer where the magic happens.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah,
So we're
I need
going
to
to
push
do
that back up.
finish checking in the freezer.
Yeah,
Uh, is what is this appliance
that's
over in the
also a
middle?
freezer which I bought, and it won't fit a guitar in it, and I've never managed to do something with it, so it's just sitting there,
Hmm,
getting in the
okay.
way. And then kind of have workstations. I don't have barely any equipment. I got the pillar drill and the bandsaw and like a terrible sounding station. That's my little thing for using the airbrush out the window.
I I
Just terrible
I
mess.
I love it though. It's not that different from how I store my stuff. So
Hmm. It works for me, you know. Um, you have to be able to get on top of your work, I find. So I'm not seated anyway,
yeah,
so I'm always walking around to this place and that place. Um,
I don't
yeah,
know how things convert, but what would you say? 500 square feet?
I'd say the room itself is uh, no more than 30 feet long by, I don't know, 30 by 15. It's tiny.
All right, so
Yeah,
that's
it's
what,
small.
600 square feet maybe.
Guess
I'm
so,
not
yeah.
great at math. Forgive me.
I don't believe that.
Uh,
Oh, come on.
uh,
Yeah, it's a tiny space. Um, also, it's on the second floor, so I can't get a big table saw in there. I can't get a overhead pin router. It's too heavy.
yeah.
So I do find it challenging doing big machine work with little machines, um, especially making bodies and things. Like it takes me forever carving tops. I don't have a massive slack belt sander, so yeah, it's a lot of handwork and yeah, it's a pain in the ass. But I don't know. I get there in the end.
I I have quite a lot of space in my shop,
Yeah,
but
your shop's gigantic.
basically I have kind of the same two tools that you do. I've
Mm,
got a fairly small drill press and a fairly
mm,
small bandsaw because
yeah.
I physically can't use anything else. That's what
Mm.
works for me. And
But I
it
think for
is,
repair things, you're not really chunking up, resawing anything. You're using small bits of timber. So
I have to make new necks every now and then and stuff like that.
right,
So a table saw would be nice, but I
yeah.
don't have one. So
Mm. I
uh,
would like one too, but I need to get you need to get something decent. It'd be nice to get one of those like 50s, those old cast iron 50s ones. But yeah, I just can't even get it upstairs or through my door. So I do think about refining my process and not. I'm scared of new methodologies. I don't want to fuck stuff up. I know what works. I'm very tentative, even to use like a orbital sander and stuff, because I'm not familiar with the thing. I don't want to screw up my wood. I can do it by hand. to the way that I like. I guess I'm quite stuck in my ways now. Mm.
Well, if you're doing something that works, why change it? I mean, I suppose there's the argument of efficiency or
Mm.
speed or whatever, but um,
I just feel
that
like machine tools can take away too much wood too quickly, and oh, man, there's no coming back from that. I'm just gonna plug my phone in.
yeah, no worries.
I think my boy is finally asleep. Thank God. He could sense the urgency. Okay, let's do it like this.
Beautiful.
There we
I
go.
mean, I don't have a whole lot more to ask you. I mean, what you take a very artisan approach to what you do with a sort of a pared down set of tools and resources and whatever, and you make it work. And I I appreciate that.
I mean, you're very self-deprecating. I know. I think I am also, but it's not in any way planned or managed.
Does it
Um,
need to be?
Sometimes I wonder if I should uh, present myself in some other manner and try and cash in on, you know, whatever myth has accrued. But um,
And I think that's a very good
like,
word for it, by the way. Myth.
yeah, for sure. But there's so many myths, aren't there? I mean, you certainly have your myth, Joel.
Mm.
Um, but I no longer do makeovers on guitars because people send me their fucking so boring reissue. I've got nothing against reissues, man. I used to, the guitars I used to tour with were those 80s Squire Japan Fenders because they were
Which
300
are
quid, and
lovely, by the
I
way.
thought they were way cooler than the new one, the new Mexican thing. So I'd buy those because I'm nerdy. I'm like, they made it between 80, 82 and 84 and blah, blah, blah. Um, I've got nothing against people having modern guitars to play. Um, but I will not refinish people's guitars anymore because I learned absolutely nothing. You look at them, even things like on the modern fretboards, they have the sort of T bar that
Yes.
goes down. You can't change the neck binding because it's jammed in there. Um, I don't want to learn about that. You know, I don't take on guitars which don't interest me anymore because I really care about cool old guitars. I want to sell someone a guitar I'm enthusiastic about because it is genuinely cool. And that is not like a sales pitch because, you know,
Out
um,
of curiosity, I mean, you have a passion for your work and a passion for the instrument.
mm,
Does it matter to you? Because at this point, you could even be picky about who you sell the guitar to. Does the client matter to you?
oh man, sometimes when you get someone who's cool, like Craig Ross, as we were talking about, um, I suppose I should say I sold a guitar to Craig Ross. He's Lenny Kravitz's guitarist. And I showed you the picture. He's like, oh, I'm here with Lenny.
Mhm.
This guitar's fucking cool, man. It's like, oh my God, that feels amazing.
Mhm.
Because he's a really sweet guy, for one. He's obviously also a high profile musician, but he's a guy who digs a cool guitar and he doesn't care if it's had head stop repair. He can buy anything he wants. Um, when that happens, it's wonderful when it's a real guy. And he sent me a photo of him playing it at something like 24 hours after he received it. That stuff's just wonderful. Um, but people are funny. I've sold guitars to people who are indifferent. I've sold guitars to people who can't play but really want a conversion because they can, I think, brag about it to their mates. Mm, I do have a very uh, not appropriate statement about selling guitars to people and people who ask me a lot of questions about a particular guitar.
Sure.
Yeah, which I'm not going to repeat now, but yeah,
Oh, all right. Well,
it's
that's
yeah.
too bad.
I will take your money is essentially it. I will take anybody's money for a cool guitar. I'm not precious. It's wonderful when it goes to someone who really digs the thing, but also I will sell anyone a guitar to an extent.
And you know what? You deserve to eat, deserve to
Mm,
make money, and you know,
yeah, it's becoming a lot harder to do that these days because, for one, I can't find the projects, and two, they're three times the cost of what they once were, and I don't feel like I will have a buyer for that guitar at the price which I'd have to sell it at. The the buyers for even player grade is narrowing. I don't know how many. I didn't have $8,500 to spend on a Les Paul when I was 17. I had $1,500 or $1,200. I'd buy a 59 Melody Maker and put P90s in it. It's a whole different ball game now. Um,
well, just out of curiosity, 10 years down the road, let's say
mm,
all of the projects dry up. You just can't
mm,
find huskers anymore. And you use up all the wood and the parts that you have, and it's just not available anymore. What do you do?
what do I do? I don't know, man. I'm quite good at growing things, so perhaps I'll move in that direction, Joe. I've
Super.
no idea, dude. I've no idea. Um,
Well, I don't think that is
I don't know.
even remotely possible as an outcome, but
Well, I'm willing to cast my hat into the speaking of mythologies, the mythology of the replica builder, and that's such a strange trope which goes through the guitar world. Uh, it seems like there's torches which have to be passed, and I've known like Terry Morgan. I knew we used to chat occasionally. Super, just a very down to earth craftsman. He wasn't like, oh, the haunting mids, the lattice. He's like, oh yeah, I've got the templates, they're good, I've got the pin router, so I just run it through this way. The round over, you have to do it a little bit under the depth of the back and then sand it over yourself so it's a little bit more elliptical. Just a workman. He used to be a pattern maker. But now he's like, his name is intoned in hushed terms. Like, I've got Terry Morgan. It's better than the real thing. I've taken it to 5 dealers and they thought it was a real burst. All this kind of stuff. Obviously, Max. We've seen a few Max guitars, haven't we, Joel?
we have.
Mm,
But I mean, it's a nice problem to have when you have that sort of mythology behind you. And I don't know, exploit
mm.
it because you didn't create it. I mean, it's not if you're making.
I don't mind doing the best, absolute best job I can using very specific skills in vintage restoration to make something which I feel is worthwhile. God damn, that's fucking convoluted. I think that's better than going to Gibson and getting a true historic and going, what even is this thing? Like, my God, this is unworkable. I can definitely do a better job than that. I do think old wood matters, personally. It matters to me. I'm not using Sapele. I'm not using Fijian mahogany. It looks completely wrong. It machines completely wrong. It smells wrong. The grain is wrong. Everything's wrong for me. I can't build a guitar that's supposed to be an old guitar using this terrible, like modern wood. So I do use old wood. Yeah.
To what extent do you take that philosophy though? Because you can take that a million steps down in terms of how detailed you want to get and how
Well,
important is the alloy of screw that holds
mm,
on the the humbucker ring. I've heard
I do
nonsense
have
like that.
my other motto is not perfect but finished. Like you can sweat this stuff to the end of time, and guitars are forgiving. Like once you got the thing together and it's finished and it's set up and it's like dialed in, it's a fantastic guitar. You think, oh shit, maybe I took 1 mil too much off the tenon. Actually, doesn't make any difference. Gibson, my God, you go into a Gibson, the things are they got shims everywhere. The woodworking is, it isn't masterful. The neck carves are beautiful. The detailing is wonderful. The finishing is impeccable. But structurally, they can be a bit sort of janky. Um, also, you know, I get guys emailing me like, I'm thinking of trying an Alnico 5 with steel base plate screws. What do you think about that? I'm like, what do I think about that? Okay. He's like, yeah, the offset between each coil is about 0.7K. I'm thinking of pushing it up to 0.9. I'm like, dude, like, I don't know what to say to you. Uh, I'm also not the guy to talk to you about that because it's really boring and you clearly have no idea what you're talking about. Um, but I will spend a great deal of time. I know you're not into this, Joel. I will look for an ABR which sounds like an old ABR because that is 25% of the tone of an old Les Paul. The reissue ones are completely horrendous. They look kind of the same. They sound terrible. That really matters to me. I'm not going to try different eras of Cluesons and think, oh my God, is there a different sort of timbre with the brass shafts in this? I don't do that, man. Tuners that work. But I will reuse old stock nylon nuts because I bought like 150 of them in a sack off some dude off eBay. So I will use old nuts and I will use Brazilian rosewood. I will use hide glue. I'm not mad on the what's that stuff they use to glue the tops on? The
I completely forget what it's called, but
the microwave glue.
yeah, it
I don't
sucks.
use that. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
use that because it's just I usually use hide glue. Um, I won't kill myself if I can't find Royalite binding. Well, that's it. That's it. I'm not doing it anymore. I'll use a nice colored, plastic binding for the neck, and I'll tint it so it looks good. And then I'll do the heavy angled sandy thing you do, which Gibson did, which gave half the lacquer come off the neck, which I never understood before. Instead, I started doing it myself. And nibs are only there because it's time saving.
Yeah.
They just glued the binding on and they just roughly took the ends off and that left nibs. It's not like they were in there with a tiny thing crafting these perfect bits. And you'll get people saying, oh, are there still nibs on the frets? Of course there's nibs on the frets. That's how they didn't care about nibs. It's just time saving. So they don't have to finish the end of the frets properly. Um, I get nerdy, but not that nerdy.
It seems like you try and focus on the larger things that are going to make an actual difference in the sound of the guitar and the
Yeah, for
feel of
sure.
the guitar.
And I will take time to make sure they sound really good. I won't send a guitar out which doesn't sound good. Um, and I have noticed that on other builders. It's beautiful. God, it looks fantastic. Colors are wonderful. The finish is great. It doesn't sound good. What's that
How
about?
do you,
You got
how do you define good? What is good to you
uh,
for
um,
50s Gibson, particularly?
well, the thing which immediately came to mind is I've had some like unobtainium replicas, like 35, 40,000 pound replicas come in from people who um, wanted me to broker them or something like that. And there's one particular one which was stunning, and you get it out, it's like, God, that's gross. As you play, you're like, ugh, it's not resonant, it's not loud, it doesn't ring, it's just meh sounding. It's not nothing impressive about it as a guitar at all. Um, to the extent I just leave it in the case, I won't tweak it. I had a good friend in Poland who had me put all vintage parts on a very high-end replica. It was okay. We had put double white paths in it. They were like £8,000. It didn't sound very good, the paths. They were very pretty. 50s harness, all the rest of it. Just not a particularly interesting guitar to me. So um, it just turns into complete cork sniffing, doesn't it? When you say, well, I want a guitar which is very resonant, sings. But some guitars do sing, there's a
That did. But how do you define that? How do you explain that to someone who hasn't played a whole
I
host
can't,
of?
I
No,
can't, I can't, and I generally don't. I've ironic as it sounds, as we've been talking for an hour, but I don't really like the sound of my own voice. I don't want to sell stuff to people particularly, and oh man, I get these people who are like, oh, if I send you my collector's choice and you replace the truss rod with no condom on it, it's like it doesn't seem like an appropriate word in the context for one. It just seems you sound stupid, dude. Um, I need a Brazilian rosewood fretboard, but I want the inlays to be almost see-through. Okay, and all these tiny little things, it's going to make zero difference whatsoever. I mean, I've done a few because I'll take their money, but none of that stuff is the least bit important. You can't just tweak cosmetic elements on a guitar which isn't otherwise right. So um, my philosophy with building is uh, I don't want any unknowns. I want the best mahogany I can find. I want really tight joinery, and I want my geometry to be correct. I don't want a bridge which is too high or too low. I want everything to sit right. I want a good neck carve, and then I can start dicking about with pickups and pots and stuff. But fundamentally, the thing has to, you know, I want to have the same aha thing from an original vintage guitar to anything I built, and that's really what I'm really trying to go for, which is hard to tie down, in honesty. But
would you say you've played certain instruments that have inspired you and been like, oh, the neck angle on this, the bridge height on this, maybe
no,
that's what I should shoot
because
for? Or is
no,
every
I
instrument is
just
its own thing? Or
I I've I've re-necked enough vintage guitars to know what the neck angle needs to be. And sometimes on 335s, the little wedges are still there on the top of the body. Like, ah, perfect. Don't even have to think about this. So I just try to make things as they were and in the pocket. It needs to be the right weight. And you can go crazy with tops and stuff. I do have fun with that, but no, I just keep it really simple. Mm. I guess you could say it's the exact opposite of what Gibson does now. They don't keep it simple. They don't have the fundamentals nailed. You just worry about the dressing, and even the dressing isn't great. Mm. You and I have had enough juniors. There's nothing to them. It's just a box joint and a slab of wood. There's literally nothing to it. But with the wrap tail, incredibly compelling. They're so loud, so resonant, and vibey. Sometimes, they're overpowered. Like if the pickup's wound too hot, and if the bridge is too low, they sound like shit. They're just like it's mud. So you need like a weaker Alnico 2 or something, or a weaker pickup, and then it cleans up, and it's just very cool. I mean, that's what's cool to me in a guitar is when you pick it up and it rings, and when it doesn't, it's a dud to me, I think. And I think, you know, I would tentatively say from the guitars I've built, they do. I have my conversion ears on, and they sound the same to me. It sounds like
like,
it sounds responds the same way as a 50s guitar because it's is the same. There's no more like art to it than that, I think.
same materials and same kind of
Yeah,
construction. Why wouldn't it
yeah,
sound the same?
it should do, right? Though I don't know. Once again, slagging off Gibson, how they missed the mark by so much. But I think it's perhaps the ears of the people that are building them, or I don't know. It's not slagging off Gibson, is it? This podcast.
Well, it's not wrong to say if it's the truth, right? I don't
It
know.
is frustrating.
And I don't think either of us wish Gibson ill.
Oh
I
no,
want them to
absolutely
do
not.
really well. Um,
I mean, I've occasionally fantasized if they like phone me up and say, "Look, can you come in?" Would that be cool? I want to work on old cool guitars, really. That's it
I
really is
bet you
my
could make a
passion.
nice big consulting check off of it, though, and then get
Yeah,
back to work.
the money would be nice. Yeah. Uh, yeah, money. I ain't great at making money, Joel, these days, I tell you.
Not not a lot of us are. There's a couple folks here who really have their business acumen
I've
sharpened to a
noticed. I'm like,
point.
wow. Yeah,
But
that's a whole different aspect, isn't it? Being a good businessman. I don't know if those go hand in hand. But you,
well,
well, not supposed to talk about you, but you are like a jobbing luthier. Like you will do things for people, obviously. Well,
yes,
as I think we discussed yesterday, I mean, I'm like the house renovator who buys a wrecked house, does all the work themselves, then sells the house. So I don't even really consider myself a luthier. Um,
I don't think it's really a matter of who gives you the guitar and who you sell it to or whatever. You and I are
mm,
doing essentially the same work. I, I think you squarely fall in that category. You work on stringed instruments, do you not?
I do.
The
Yeah.
definition of a luthier.
If someone comes along and says, "Would you refret my guitar?" I'm like, no. Someone drove over my SG.
And
I'm like, "Oh
yet
yeah, I'll fix that."
you refret guitars, just not.
I refret my own guitars.
Yeah,
I won't do it for anybody else.
that's just a different business, trajectory or style
Lack
or
of a
whatever.
business, lack of a business trajectory. Mm.
I don't know. I'm uh, I'm continually amazed by the work you do. I've
You're
kept
too
you
kind, Joel.
kept you here an hour, which is what you promised me, and
My kid's still up. What little shit. Honestly, I think he
that's
could sense it. Honestly. Oh well. I'm glad we could do it though, Joel.
I'm so grateful that you lent us your time and your
It's my
experience
pleasure.
and so forth. So
If
thank you.
anybody can learn something from it, oh, I have one story which is relevant
Oh yeah, yeah.
to aspiring luthiers. Before I, um, if there's one kernel of truth of my own experience doing this and making my living off it, I used to phone up my luthier friends and say, "How'd you get into it? How'd you do it? What's the secret? What was the point where you knew it was time?" And they all said to me, "Oh, stop talking about it and do it." Yeah, but how do you mean do it? Do I need to go to this guy? Do I need to learn these skills? Um, and I completely had a block because I saw it as a skilled, a luthier as an entity, and I wanted to be there. I had no idea how to access it. I thought there was some sort of gentle process towards getting into it. It really just was just fucking do it. I had such a trash Les Paul that owed me 4 grand at the time. No one would do the work. I thought I'm just gonna try. How hard can it be? I need to actually physically engage with the process, and that was literally the step which led me on this path until now. So there's something to be said for just getting your hands dirty.
Absolutely. And it's impressive what you do with
You're
that.
too kind,
With
Joel.
um, there's schools out there where people pay a
Mm,
lot of money to go learn this kind of thing,
I'd love to
and
go to one.
perhaps as a teacher.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I,
I'll go for
I
eccentric, artisanal, something or other.
well, Anyway, thank you again. It's been
You're welcome, mate.
lovely,
You're
lovely
looking
chatting.
well. Keep it up.
I feel like hell. I'm running a
Okay.
bit of a fever, as a matter of fact.
Okay,
So,
dude. I appreciate your time, man.
yeah. If there's anybody here who can unmute and say thank you to Yuki, because it's late and he has a ornery child, and so
It's Father,
everybody,
I've been
thank
smoking
you,
my
Thank you.
vape, so you're too welcome, guys. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Yuuki.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for giving us
Thanks,
your
guys.
time.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Yuuki.
thank you. Great wealth of knowledge.
Thank you, mate.
I really identify with the whole thing about sculpting, you know, just chipping away until the thing is there the way that you envision it.
wasn't
And
that like the whole Michelangelo thing? There's a human being in there, and you have to find it.
yeah, it's the same with the guitar. It's like how you lay out a piece of wood, you look at the grain, you're like, if I put it here, I'm going to run into end grain. I better move it over a little bit. This piece of bone, the grain orientation's a little funny. Let's sand it right there, fit it to the left a little more, start filing away. I don't know. All those pieces add up. And if you can like look at it and already see it,
Yeah.
you're not going to have any trouble getting to the
Yeah.
end.
Now, people like him who just kind of intuit something.
Yeah.
They don't need to be told. They see it. They figure it out.
Right.
I love that.